You know how some places just have a vibe, an energy that makes you feel like there's a story there, just hiding under the surface? Well, today we're going to pull back that curtain and look at the shocking, sometimes bizarre, and often pretty grim histories hiding in places we see every day.
Seriously, think about it. The park you walk your dog in, that old building on the corner, we pass by them all the time, totally clueless about the wild stuff that happened there. Every single place has a past, and today we're going to do a little digging.
Okay, let's jump right in with our first spot, Cheeseman Park in Denver, Colorado. Now, if you go there today, it's gorgeous. 80 acres of green space, people having picnics, joggers everywhere. It is the definition of a peaceful city park. But that peace and quiet, it's built on a foundation that is anything but.
So the whole story starts back in 1858. This land wasn't a park, it was Prospect Hill Cemetery. But fast forward to the 1890s, and Denver is booming. They want a beautiful park in this prime real estate, not a rundown graveyard. So Congress says, okay, you can have a park. But there was a tiny little problem. What do you do with the more than 5,000 people buried there? The city's solution, let's just say, turned into a complete and utter nightmare. The city hired an undertaker, a guy named E.P. McGovern, to move all the bodies. Here's the catch. They paid him per coffin. So, to make a quick buck, McGovern came up with a gruesome plan. He started using child-sized coffins for everyone, even adults. And to make them fit, he had his workers, hack the bodies into pieces. The scene was so horrific, with remains just scattered everywhere, that the local newspaper called it, and I quote, the work of ghouls.
Well, after that story broke, the city, completely embarrassed, fired McGovern. But, and this is the craziest part, they never hired anyone to finish the job. They just stopped. They knocked down the remaining headstones, filled in the graves, threw some grass seed down, and called it a park. So yeah, more than 5,000 bodies were never moved. They're still there, right under the feet of everyone enjoying a nice day at the park.
All right, from a very public park, let's jump across the ocean to a very private villa in Cefalù, Sicily. This place was called the Abbey of Thelema. It was started in 1920 by one of the most infamous figures of his time, the occultist Aleister Crowley. His idea was to create a kind of spiritual commune, a utopian society.
Crowley wanted the Abbey to be a real-life magical school. His followers would live there to practice his philosophy, which he called Thelema. The whole point was for each person to discover their own true will in life. The central idea was pretty simple. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. So their days were filled with rituals, yoga, and studying Crowley's very dense writings.
And for a while, it actually worked. It was this weird, unconventional little community out in the Sicilian countryside. But the Abbey's reputation as this place of ultimate freedom and magical exploration was about to get completely destroyed by a mysterious death that set off a huge international scandal.
It all centered on the death of a young student there, a guy named Raoul Loveday. His wife, Betty, fled back to London and immediately sold an insane story to the tabloids. She claimed Raoul died because Crowley forced him to drink the blood of a sacrificed cat during a ritual. Now, what most likely happened was way less dramatic. He probably just got sick with a nasty fever after drinking water from a contaminated spring nearby. Crowley had even warned him not to.
But you know how it is. The tabloid story was way juicier. The scandal blew up. The press painted Crowley as this evil cult leader. And all that noise got the attention of Benito Mussolini's brand new fascist government. They weren't big fans of secret societies or weird Englishmen, so in 1923 they kicked Crowley out of Italy for good. The abbey was abandoned, and the locals literally painted over all of Crowley's bizarre murals, burying its strange chapter in history.
Okay, for our next secret past, we're heading back to the States, specifically to the coast of Georgia during the American Civil War. We're talking about Fort Pulaski. This thing was a Confederate stronghold, a masterpiece of military engineering, and everyone on both sides believed it was absolutely 100% impenetrable.
I mean, this quote from a top U.S. engineer says it all. You might as well bombard the Rocky Mountains. And you can see why he thought that. The fort's walls were 11 feet thick, solid brick. At the time, standard cannons were only really effective from about a half a mile away. The closest place the Union Army could set up their guns was over a mile out, so the fort seemed totally untouchable.
But everything changed because of one crucial piece of new tech. You see, the Confederates inside the fort had the old-school smoothbore cannons. The Union forces, however, showed up with something brand new and revolutionary, rifled cannons. These cannons had grooves inside the barrel that made the shells spin, giving them unbelievable range and accuracy. All of a sudden, the Union could hammer the fort from a distance nobody thought was even possible.
And the result was just devastating. On April 10th, 1862, the Union guns opened fire, and in just 30 hours, those new rifled shells had blasted massive holes through the impenetrable walls. They were getting dangerously close to the fort's main gunpowder storage. The Confederate commander had no choice. He surrendered. In a day and a half, a single invention had made every single brick fort on the planet totally obsolete, just like that.
All right, for our last story, let's head out west to Eastern Oregon, to a place called the Hot Lake Hotel. This wasn't just some roadside inn. It was built around natural geothermal springs and was this incredible pioneering health resort, a true palace of luxury in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, this place was basically a town under one roof. It was one of the very first buildings in the world to be heated with geothermal energy. It had a 100-room luxury hotel, a state-of-the-art hospital, a ballroom, its own bank, even a post office. It was so famous for its medical treatments that people called it the Mayo Clinic of the West. Get this, the actual Mayo brothers, founders of the real Mayo Clinic, even came to visit and check it out.
But all that glory didn't last. The hotel's luck ran out in 1934, when a huge fire just ripped through the building and destroyed an entire wing. After that, it kind of limped along for decades, serving as everything from a nursing home to a flight school, before it was finally completely abandoned in 1991.
For years, the Hot Lake Hotel was just a ruin, a ghost of what it used to be. It became a magnet for ghost hunters and was so creepy it was even featured on that TV show, The Scariest Places on Earth. A pretty sad chapter for such a grand place. But thankfully, this story has a happy ending. After decades of decay, someone bought it and began restoring it. And in 2020, the hotel reopened, finally bringing its incredible story full circle.
So what's the takeaway from all this? A park over a graveyard, a scandalous abbey, a fort that became obsolete overnight, and a hotel that burned down and came back to life. Well, they all show us that the world around us is just layered with these incredible stories. The past isn't really gone, it's just sleeping, waiting for us to look a little closer.
It really makes you think of that famous line from William Faulkner, "The past is never dead, it's not even past." And it's so true. What happened yesterday or 100 years ago is still echoing through our world today, whether we see it or not.
Which really just leaves one last question for you. The next time you're walking around your town, take a second to really look at that old building or that quiet park. What happened there? What secrets is it holding? Because, as we've seen today, you really never know what you might find.